Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Gamefromscratch, and today we're going to be doing an impromptu 3D tutorial on the Godot engine, specifically using Godot 4.2, but this should be relevant for any version of Godot beyond version 4. What we're going to look at specifically today is lighting. What you see in here, this is a 3D scene that is being lit. I'm going to show you the various different systems that go together for the lighting systems in 3D for Godot. I've been told there's not a lot of 3D Godot 4 tutorials out there, so I'm going to do my best to rectify that. This is going to be a very informal tutorial. We're going to cover a lot of topics here, and we're going to start off with making this level. Now this itself, the level we're using from somewhere else. You're also going to notice there's some purple going on up there. This is not a perfect conversion. Now you may be wondering, how did I get this level? Well, this actually came from the most logical of places, Unreal Engine. So we started here. Basically, if you have an Unreal Engine asset, you can take it, go to File, Export All, and then pick out GLB and export the file out, which is what I've done. Basically exported this out to a GLB file, and then at that point in time, I took it into Blender. So we brought it into Blender, and then we just did some cleanup. So you're gonna notice again, if I look up here at the top, it's just a chug in here, but those purple, for example, each one of these things, the import didn't come in right. So you can fix these things basically by grabbing one that did, grabbing one that didn't, selecting everything, deleting it, and pasting in the other one, and that will fix it. So you're gonna have a little bit of cleanup you have to do because this was meant for Unreal Engine and not the Godot engine, but I think it imported pretty nicely. So if you wanna go ahead and check this guy out, so long as you're watching this within a few days of this recording, it is part of the Humble Bundle Game Masters Toolkit assets, tutorials, and bundles. Again, focused on Unreal and Unity. There are also ways to get Unity assets into the Godot game engine as well, by the way. But the one specifically that we are working with is available right here. I'm also playing around with the bowling alley for something else. It's great just to have these levels to work with, but obviously to follow around with the rest of this tutorial, use whatever level you want. But that just happens to be where I'm getting mine from. All right, so back to our finished product. So this is what we've got going on. There are a number of different light setups going on here. We've got manually placed point lights like these guys right here. They're straightforward. Basically, just move them around in the world. I'll show you how to create those in just a second. We have the environment light itself coming from the sky. We have a voxelized global illumination going on. I'll show you between how to do real-time or voxel baked global illumination, whichever one you prefer. So yeah, there's quite a bit going on here. We've also got emissive textures going on, such as you've got this sign going on right here. In fact, I went ahead with this cafe sign over here and attached a little script to it to actually change the emission strength over time. And I think the effect is actually kind of cool. So this is not a light at all. This is baked into the GLTF file. It has an emission value on the actual cafe sign, which I set in Blender before doing the export. And as you can see from the end result, well, as soon as this finishes loading up, here is our scene, and you'll notice we have a blinking cafe sign. So everything here, you got a number of different lighting scenarios going on here. You got direct lights here that are casting the shadows that are interacting with the scene. You have voxel global illumination that is baked around here. You have emissive textures here, and as you can see, you can actually programmatically affect an emissive texture like so. So we're gonna jump in and take a look at lighting from the very beginning. So first thing we gotta do is import in our environment. So let's go ahead and create a new project. So come in here, new. Of course it goes in temp because of course it does. And then we will call this Bon Perry. Create that folder. We will have none and go ahead and create it. So pretty straightforward. It's normal creation of a project. And then what we need to do next is import in our GLB file. Now, one thing you're going to know about this one is that file itself is gigantic. Once I exported it out from Blender, the actual file, this guy right here, is 1.1 gigabytes in size, but nonetheless, what we do, basically drop that into our world like so, and let it go ahead and do the importing. This is going to take a little bit of time, so I will be back in a second. Alrighty, several minutes later, we are now ready to go. Let's go ahead and create our scene. So our scene is created, grab our GLB file, and instantiate one into the scene. This, again, is a rather large GLB, so this could take a second. And by a second, I meant several seconds. But here we go. Our level is now imported. And I'm going to just go ahead and move this guy just so that it's at the origin. So 0, 0, 0, just to make things very consistent. And there's a couple things going on that you're going to notice immediately a little strange. First off, you'll notice that we have lighting in our scene. That is totally and utterly normal because what you'll notice here is until we set up a world volume, these guys are created. So basically this is doing a preview world environment for us, which we're going to create one by scratch. And then this one is doing a default, like basically directional 3D light. So there we are with our scene without light. Now the other thing you may be noticing here is okay, what's going on with all these glows? And that is the emissions from these textures. So strangely enough, some of these things make sense. These lights, they're emissive. These lights, emissive. This sign, emissive. These, they make a little bit less sense to be emissive. So we're going to show you how you can actually turn emission off, and then you see we've got a wide variety of different settings here in terms of the skies that I thought I fixed all of them. So I'm going to switch back to my other model in just a second where I've actually fixed things. But first I'll show you how you could go about doing that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to open this guy up. So we're going to make it editable children, like so, and then we're going to go ahead and select an object in the scene. So this guy, for example, should not be emissive. So what we're going to do is grab it like that, and then what you do is you just come on into it, and then you're going to go ahead and make it unique. So you're not going to re-import this guy, by the way. And then what you're going to notice if you come in, surface, it's got a material attached to it. You go into the material, emission, and you can turn it off. There we go, emission, off. So then it becomes no longer emissive. And again, make it unique. Recursive doesn't work the way I think it should, by the way, which is kind of irritating. Make the surface unique, and then once again, turn the emission off. So there is how you remove the emission for everything. I don't want to do this over and over again, so I'm going to go to the fixed version now. Alrighty, so now we're back to the version I want. Most of the things fixed. Again, I'm not fixing all of the tiles. It's just too much of a pain. But things that were emissive, like these trees and these vines and such, are no longer emissive. They're just straight out standard materials. But if you want something to be emissive, like this sign right now, it makes sense to be emissive. So what you're going to notice here is we go to the mesh for it, expand that one out, and we look at it. There's multiple surfaces. This one is the emissive channel. This one is your straight out texture channel. You go into the emissive channel, and down here, what you're going to notice here is you can change the color of the emissions, like so. You can have a pretty profound effect like that, and the amount. So how strong you want the emissions to be. So emissive textures is definitely one way to light your scene. Again, all the lights in the scene are emissive, but we've also gone ahead and added lights on top of them. So this is an Omni light that I've added on top of an emissive texture. So you can see the emissive texture is giving a glow around the texture there. You're getting some light out, but obviously it's not lighting the scene like you would see from this. So that's your first option for lighting, is you can literally directly place lights in the scene. Like what we've got with this guy right there, it is lighting the scene around it. So again, move this guy around, and you're going to notice it's affecting the scene accordingly. See those? See these chairs and the lighting? As I move around, we're getting that light there. A couple things you're going to want to know. This is an Omni light, which basically means it's omnidirectional. The light is cast in a spherical radius. You can control the radius of the light being cast using this setting right here, and also the way that it falls off over time by using this right here, this curve control of the attenuation. And you can also control how your shadows are generated using a double paraboloid or cubic. You probably just want to leave it as cubic as a standard. You also have control over how intense a light is using the energy here, the amount of indirect energy that the light actually is creating. And that would be secondary energy coming out. But the key setting you're going to want to come down to is this one. This is going to be off by default, and that's shadowing. So if you want to have shadows generated, turn that on. So here's your light with no shadowing, and see what it does to the world. So the world around it, and then I go back here and turn shadowing on, and now you're going to notice a really profound difference there. So if you want it to be casting shadows in the world, you'll turn the shadow setting on, and then you can control the bias of the shadow. So basically you can change how the shadows are created using these two settings right here. Normally your default settings will be probably good enough. And another key one that you're going to find, you can change the opacity of the shadows, so how hard they're going to be. And then you can also blur the shadows. So depending on the artistic style, you're never going to want to not blur it. They look really jagged and awful. But you can see here, you can put a little bit of blur on there, and you can get more realistic shadows as a result. So that is the one kind of light that you can create. On top of that, there are several different lights you can work with. So we're looking with an Omni light at this point in time, but you've also got in the Light 3D a directional light, which is, you can think of like the sun is a directional light. Basically, it just comes in a particular angle of attack, so you're going to get shadows and such from it. And then you're going to have a spotlight, which is like a directional light. The difference is a directional light is like literally the sun, this omnipresent, intense light, whereas a spotlight is more focused in size. So let's go ahead and find there we go. So here you can see this is a light that is just affecting the cone directly in front of it. So it's a much less intense light, and it's directional. So you can see the cone where it goes. So we can You can aim that light down, and we'll bring it up so it's out of the world. So there you can see, it's only affecting to the radius of the actual cone that it is set up with. Otherwise, there are some specific sets for it, so we could say long range, short range, and so on. And then everything else is the same otherwise. So this is your big thing. You can change the degree, how focused the light is. So if you wanted to create a flashlight, that is when you would use something like a spotlight, whereas a directional light, again, is more like an omnipresent light, like what you've got when you're dealing with the sun. So next we got a lot going on with this scene, and a lot of this was actually being done by two things. First off, we've created a sky, and we set up the world environments with that sky. So how do we go about doing that? Well, let's go ahead and undo everything. So we're going to delete the world environment. Boom. Our world has no environment yet. So this is default. It's being lit by the various different lights in the world. We are getting the default sky still. So I'm going to click here. No default sky. So you can see this is the world just being lit by the emissive textures and the various different lights that are in our world. So I could come in here for all of our different lights, and we could shut them all down one by one. And now you're being lit pretty much exclusively by this, the emissive textures in the world. And again, these are emissive textures for reasons I fully don't understand from the import process. But now you could probably want to go ahead and set up the world environment. Again, you can get a default. So if you want to have a default sun, you can have it like this. Or again, you could create a directional light and have your own sun if you want to control how things are going. And you can turn the sunshine off if you wish. And you can have it create a default environment for you. What you're going to probably want to do is set up your own default world environment. And there's quite a bit involved in this. Let me just get rid of all this. The other thing I've got going on is voxelized global illumination. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that, and we'll recreate it. Okay, so this is pretty much a virgin, unlit world, no world environment. The only thing we've got going on is our emissive lights. All of our other lights have been turned off now. So I'm going to come back here. Let's go down here, and we're going to create a world environment. So this is key. World environment has requirements. Of course, the biggest one being the world environment itself. So let's create a new world environment. And then there are a bunch of things we can configure here. So you've got your ambient color, where your background is coming from. This is just using a clear color. Ambient light, again, is coming from the background. But what you probably want to do is set up your outside. You probably want to have a sky. So we're going to go ahead and create a sky like so. It's going to lock in a new category here of type sky. So again, this is your skybox around your world. And what we're going to do, and now you'll notice we're down to literally just the emissive license because there's no ambient light at all now. So we're going to go ahead and create a new sky. Simply drill down into the sky category here, go to sky, create a new sky. The new sky that we wish to create, use a sky material of type procedural sky material, and boom. And it gives you the ability to set the sky color, so the top and the horizon color. You can blend between them and so on. And then once you've got that set, you can come down to your ambient light. So your sky is your default. Set your ambient sky like so. And then your background, you can also switch to sky. So now your sky is lighting the world. Now the next step you're going to probably want to do is come on down here for a couple of other things. This one I change almost immediately. I don't like linear tone mapping. This is basically the way that color is interpreted by your virtual camera, I suppose you can think of it. There's a couple of different algorithms here: Reinhard, Filmic, and ACES. So here's Reinhard, here's Filmic, and here's ACES. So people tend to like Filmic or ACES. I'll stick with Filmic for this one. By the way, you've got a macro control here of just general world exposure here. Think about this as like the exposure setting on a normal camera. And then here, the white volume of the result here. We'll leave them all at 1 at this point in time. So there you've got your world is being lit via your sky. Now, next up, we're going to look at something called global illumination. Now, this is light comes in right now using this simple lighting model, and it hits something, and it hits it once. So what a global illumination is secondary bounces. Basically, light will hit surfaces and then bounce off and then show up on other surfaces. So there's a couple of ways of modeling global illumination. The first one is sign distance field global illumination. Now this is an algorithm for doing it dynamically, and it works well in large open environments. So this setting would actually work fairly well for using sign distance field global illumination. If you want to use it, just go ahead and click on. And now it is enabled. This will take the sky as the secondary bounces. Now there is a bit of a lag on it. So there you can see as we move, it is calculating it. And now what you're going to do is you're going to get secondary bounces from the lights as they come in. So you can say it's reading the skylight. You can have it, you have number control over how it's going to handle things. You can change the energy levels here. By the way, you can also change the intensity of the sky over here. But you're going to find that the sign distance field global illumination always has a bit of a lag to it. but it gives you kind of, again, those secondary bounces going to give you nice, softer results here. Now let's go back and turn on our lighting in the world again. So all the various different lights that we've set up in the world. So these are literally, again, just Omni lights that have been posted around the world to make things more realistic. Some of them will have shadows on, some of them will not. Again, that is a key setting. So if you wish to not have shadows casted by a light, you can turn it off with that setting right there. The other thing you're going to want to know about lights is you can actually set the color of it, and you're going to find that straight white lights tend to look very odd. So what you're going to want to normally do is make them slightly yellow. So you're going to get a different result depending on the light you use, but straight white looks strange. Normally you're going to want, again, a very light yellowing of your light, but play around with the coloring of your lighting to make a pretty profound difference in that regard. Now this, again, we use Sign Distance Field Global Illumination just to give us that ambient light around our world, but that is not the only option. In fact, I don't find that it works the best. My preference is to actually go back. So we'll go back to our world environment over here, and we'll turn Sign Distance Field Global Illumination back off. So here we go. All those secondary bounces are gone. And instead, what we're going to do is add a new node to our world called VoxelGI. So this is basically doing global illumination calculations using this voxeled cube. So what we're going to do is scroll out here, and we're going to notice here the extents of it. And what we're going to do is basically take this guy to each extent, like so. So it encompasses our world in each direction. I like that it's got these handy manipulators now. So up, like so. And I think we're good down, but let me just verify. All right, so it looks like we've got our world encompassed. Let me just bring the floor down a little bit. All right, so this encompasses the entirety of our world now. So what we can do, you'll notice here, it's going to have an error here. And it does, by the way, even when it's set up right, you're going to get this warning. It goes away when you save a scene. I do think that there is a bug here. But what it wants is no VoxelGI data set. So this node is disabled. Bake static objects to enable GI. So what you got to do is, first off, I'm going to come in here and set the subdivision level, so the amount of resolution, I guess, of our baking. But you need to create a new VoxelGI data. So this is where all the data is going to be stored. And then you're going to notice with it selected, you have this button over here called Bake VoxelGI. And then what you're going to do is bake the lighting in the world. So this goes through all of the meshes that are set for it in the world. And basically it calculates how those secondary bounces are going to work. So this is using baked lighting instead of dynamic like VoxelGI, the DDGI solution did, which by the way is getting renamed in 4.3. Same functionality. So it's going to have, I think it's going to be called DynamicGI or something going forward. And then boom, it has now calculated all those secondary bounces and such, and giving you a nice, more natural, pleasing light. I find that this, I like the results better than with the dynamic global illumination, but the dynamic global illumination will work better, again, with a giant open world type setting. So that's one of those things to be aware of. When you save your scene, this will eventually go away. Like I said, it seems to be a bit bugged. I'm not 100% certain why. It's been that way for a while, though. So that is it. And there's a couple of other settings you might be interested in here in the lighting. SIL. This will make your shadows kind of darker, and you got control over the settings of that one as well. Subsurface ambient occlusion is another setting in place, and then that's mostly what you need to know from the lighting perspective. So again, lighting in Godot is definitely an art form. You're mixing a couple of different things together. So you've got your lighting, so you've got global illumination that you can do via the voxelized baking, or the dynamic version via the Sign Distance Field Global Illumination, which again has just been renamed in 4.3 to real-time GI or dynamic GI or something to that effect. But you can turn this one on as well. By the way, don't run them both at the same time. It very much confuses it. You've got your various different lights in the world, such as, again, the most common one you're going to use is something like an Omni light, like this guy, straightforward light in the world. Again, you move it around, you see the immediate results. The key thing you're going to want to know, you control the range of the light and how shadows are generated or not generated, available over here. And again, that's obviously going to have a huge impact of how the light works. In your world, these are going to be the lights that you use most often. On top of that, you have directional lights, which you would use for emulating the sun or the moon, or just blatant super light that you want to kind of create. And then when it comes to ambient light, generally you get it from the sky. By the way, the ambient light does not have to come from the sky. So go back here to the world environment. Right now, the ambient light source is the sky, but I could turn this into just a single color right here, and we could have purple. So we can have just strong purple light, and again, you can change the intensity of that ambient light here. So if you don't want to muck around with the sky, or you're going for like a saturated or a cartoony look or something, it might be that you want to just set an ambient light like this. Of course, you could turn it off ambient light completely and have it just lit by the lights that are in your scene, but or you can have it from the background itself. The background being set here, the background is the sky. Or again, sky and background sky are pretty much the same thing. Control the energy level again over there. You can control how much the sky is actually contributing with this slider over here. And you can control the intensity of the sky over here. And again, you can change the sky itself here. And then you've got control. You got a couple different options for how the sky is actually created. We went with the procedural sky material. There's also you could do it with the shader. You can do it with the parametric. I forget the exact name of the other one. There is another sky option there. And of course, you can change the different colors of your sky, and you'll see the results of them right there. Normally, you're going to want to tend towards neutral because you don't want to have a really strong influence on the world. So you see, obviously, like a dark influence, you're going to get a much different result. And you're kind of shading the entire world with whatever you pick in terms of your sky material. So that is the gist of lighting in Godot 4. Again, it's a mix of things, and there's an art and a science to it for sure. But you can get some pretty nice results out of it. And a lot of the results you're seeing are really going to come down to how well you lit it. And it's as simple as that. And it's not something I'm really good at, so don't look at me for any kind of instruction in that regards. I'm showing you what the tools are. You need to have your inner artist actually figure out how to best make sense of them. So that is lighting in Godot 4. We covered pretty much all the major aspects of it. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below, and I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.